Hey, what's going on, everyone? Back again with another video. This is a reaction video based on a video that I ran across on Dina Belenkaya's channel. And the title of the video is Whether Will a Woman Ever Become World Chess Champion? And they were interviewing Judith Polgar. So I just want to give a shout out and credit to that channel, Dina Belenkaya. 689,000 subscribers. Definitely subscribe to the channel. It's a nice podcast. But there was some points in the interview that caught my attention, and I was going to leave a post actually in the comment section, but I said, you know what, I'll just make a video about it and give my ideas on one point in particular. And that point in particular is this idea of whether there should be a separation between women's chess and men's chess, and why. Okay, so let's get into it. I'll be just fast forwarding it. I'm not gonna play the whole interview. Of course, you could just go watch the entire interview, but I want to get to just some key points and make my brief commentary on it. As usual, please like, subscribe, hit the the thumbs up button, all of that stuff, and help out. And if you're so inclined, please donate. So let's get right into it.
You've chosen not to play in women's only tournaments. What do you feel is holding professional women chess players back today?
Well, I think it goes back for deeper than that they are not choosing to play in open section that much. It comes from education, the environment they grew up in, starting out with the parents, grandparents, so the very small the people who are around them, and also the coaches, the club. So all this has a very strong impact on girls when they play chess, and it gives them a kind of mindset where they belong. And I think that is kind of where it all starts. So when someone is like 16, 18, they have that mindset already that they're accustomed to play women only events or mostly women only events. They understand that that's the environment where they fit the best or they feel the most comfortable. But I do hope that it's going to be changing the environment, the supportive system around them. And so I really hope that it's going to change for ladies the mindset that they should become the best they can. When you study, you learn, get better today than you were yesterday. So that's my main goal.
Okay, so I do agree with her. Of course, I'm a big F. Buckminster Fuller fan. One of his famous quote is that environment is stronger than will. So you can't really go wrong with this kind of answer. Of course, it's a multitude of factors, right? But environment is definitely very powerful. When anyone, a woman or a man, grows up, he is going to be shaped, not only by his genetics, of course, or her genetics, but also by the environment. And so if you're in a culture where it's always been like that, women over here, men over here, women do this, men do that, all right, it's very hard to break out of that tradition. So that's definitely something that you have to respect, especially if you're getting go into more conservative countries. You will be fortunate even to see a woman playing the game. Period.
Mhm. So a lot of it basically also psychological, right? Because it's all in your head, like how you program yourself. Like, can you, like, what's your ceiling, right?
Well, yeah, but that also comes very much from the growing up when you're a child, the environment. When you're a 6 years old girl, let's say, obviously, most of the time, if a coach sees a 6, 7, 8 year old girl being talented, I mean, how can you see talent, right? That she or he or boy, doesn't matter, kid is very curious. They're very much engaged. You see the eye that how much they are so much engaged with the position, with the tournament. If there's a loss, then they cry. So if a coach sees a girl, most likely they are going to be phrasing her, wow, you're so talented, you can become a women's world champion, and really great. While if there is a boy of 6 or 7, 8 years old, they are not going to tell them that you can become a 2650 player. They are going to tell them and encourage them to become Magnus Carlsen, that you're really talented, you can go to the maximum. And this already scaling and gives a perspective to them why they want to phrase them and give the push. Already there is a big expectation difference, right?
Very strong point, very strong elaboration of what was already said. So the question by the interviewer, Dina, was good because it caused Judith to go even further into her explanation into the psychological aspects. And again, there's even a scripture in the Bible that is very powerful that says, "As a man thinketh, so is he." Right? Basically, your thoughts are very powerful, and we are all affected, by our upbringing, our environment, our worldviews, etc. And that is a great example, right? That you might have a coach that he has his own views. Maybe he's, from a country that's really conservative, and he's used to his mother, his grandmother, just being at home in the kitchen, and being super traditional. So he has a young girl that's very talented on the chessboard. He might just tell her, "Hey, that's great. You could become a woman's world champion." Not with any not with any malice in his mind, but just that traditional upbringing in his mind. He immediately steers her toward the lesser goal, right? Not of world champion of all humanity, but woman's world champion. Whereas the young boy, he's like, "Hey, you can be the best in the world." Okay, so that's an interesting interesting elaboration, because this happens in other facets of life also. I remember reading a story or seeing an interview. I think it was like Malcolm X or someone. And he was saying when he was in school as a little boy, he was very curious, about medicine and things like that. And he was curious about being a doctor. And the teacher told him, "Well, you're good with your hands. Maybe you should be, focus on being a carpenter or something like that." And he said that had a great effect on him. And you can imagine that. Say you're a little kid, when you're a little kid, it's like the sky's the limit, right? You in your mind, you could be an astronaut, you could be an airplane pilot, a train operator, whatever, But if an adult that is important to you in your life comes along and tells you, "You know what, I think you should concentrate on being a garbage man," that might have a profound effect on you, especially if you don't have anyone to counter that. So good point by Judith here. I also like to add too, I like that she's not giving any really like these politically correct answers, and talking about discrimination and all of these type of weak arguments that are usually presented. I like how she is saying, "Hey, this is why we have the situation," right? And let's see what else she has to say. All right, check this next part out. It's interesting.
I know you've asked Dina, who's a woman grandmaster, when she's going to be pursuing the grandmaster title, which it sounds like you are against women's titles.
Well, to tell you the truth, it's not so simple as that, but I'm also looking and trying to figure out what are different ideas and push to ladies to aim for more. And I do believe that if boys would have lower titles, they would go for that. Because it's not about girls and boys, it's about human nature. That you want to get the next step, and you want to get the next step which is easier than the other. Mm-hmm. Of course, there are kids who like challenge like crazy, but that's regardless whether they are boy or girl. Generally, people go to the easier direction. So from this point of view, I'm saying that yeah, it might be a good idea, at least for many of the girls and ladies who I talk to also, they do say that actually it's a tricky situation because if they wouldn't be pushed or encouraged to the women title, they would be faster growing in the male titles.
You beat legends like Gary Kasparov.
So interesting point. Again, talking about incentives, right? That's what it boils down to. She was saying, hey, that it's about human nature. It's really not like a boy girl thing. That if you were to lower the boys' incentives, they would go for that, right? So for men, the only incentive to go for is the master title, right? You have the candidate master, then FIDE master, international master, and grandmaster, right? There's not anything else along the way for you, right? There's no like like equivalent to like women's grandmaster title, right? Or women's international title, women's FIDE master title, etc., right? So these seem to be like again, I can see where she says it's a tricky situation for some of the females because it's like beneficial and it works against them at the same time. I wish they got into the actual question of why there are female titles in the first place. All right, I wish I would hear Judith's response to that question. But we continue. So unfortunately, at least for my interest, they go away from that topic of women's titles in chess, and they go on to ask Judith about a little bit of her history, rivalry between the sisters. You can see there basically how she grew up in a competitive chess environment in the household, and how her parents had sacrificed a great deal, even quitting their jobs for the children to excel. Her greatest victories and stuff like that in games, versus Kasparov, Kramnik, etc., and leave that topic that I was most interested in because I really wanted to hear like her particular response as to why there are women's titles in chess. And I kind of believe that the ball was dropped a bit right there, but I don't know if it was intentional or not. So I'll say that the ball was placed down at that moment, because even today a lot of male chess players, they always say, well, why are there women's titles? It's women want equality. They're always asking for equality, but then you have these women's titles, and I'm gonna get into what the reason why in a second. And I believe this is the big elephant in the room that's never addressed when these type of issues come up. Okay, so I'll get to that in a second. Okay, so real quick, I'm just gonna show some brief excerpts, to kind of quickly summarize some of the arguments as why there are women's titles and why chess is basically separated as it is. So
do you know why chess
then
is
we'll
separated
come back.
by gender? Trust me, there is a good reason. To put things into perspective, the first ever Women's World Chess Championship was held in 1927. A few years before that, women were not even allowed into chess clubs, and at the same time, almost all chess players were men. So the Women's Championship and other women's tournaments were created to encourage female chess players to play and eventually increase the number of total female chess players. And it worked! In 2024, the number of female chess players is close to 15% compared to the 1% we had back then. This is a big deal because most of the problems women face in chess, such as lower rating and gender bias, will eventually be solved if there are enough women influencing the chess scene. Do you know why chess is...
All right, so here is another one with this idea.
I am a women grandmaster. The full nuance behind why they're separate women's only titles and open titles is a very long story, so here's a really quick summary. Women are able to compete in any tournament and also receive all of the open titles. On top of that, there are women only tournaments to encourage participation for women as well as create a safe environment. So while I am a women grandmaster, which means that I had to get 3 women grandmaster norms and achieve a rating of 2300, I am also able to technically get the
2300.
grandmaster title, which is open to everybody in the world. The grandmaster title requires 3 grandmaster norms and a FIDE rating of 2500. I have a lot of respect for all of the grandmasters out there and am in no way trying to make a play on their title by calling myself a woman grandmaster. I am simply a woman grandmaster, and I'm cool with that.
And this is the last clip I'll play, and then we'll get right into my what I think again is the big elephant in the room.
Whoa,
It's
you
never
really think
addressed.
so?
I have one too, I'm allowed to say it. I think it sets up the wrong incentives and it says the wrong thing.
Wow.
But it also sets stuff for like young girls who are like, I want to be a woman master. And then years later, they're like, wait, that was kind of silly.
Maybe. As a kid, I think the motivation of getting any title was good.
I don't like
For
I don't
me-
think I saw it as a different
For me,
thing.
I was motivated, but now as an adult, I'm like, that's embarrassing.
Right.
Do you think
Hype
the
on it.
impact as a kid or as an adult is more important?
I just think we don't have female PhDs, so why do we have female titles? Like, women are capable of getting the same titles as men, so we should aim for that. I don't
And finally, here's Judith saying
Still in the
basically
spirit
what
of
she just
International
said.
Women's Day.
Can you imagine yourself if your parents and your coaches would tell you that, well, if you reach 2650, oh, amazing, and that's the maximum, that's the goal of all. Can you imagine yourself, then you ever dream of becoming 27 plus, playing the World Championship title match with Magnus, who is 2800 and above?
All right, so let's get into the elephant in the room that we were talking about. So you saw these different views on this is just a game in the background with Judith versus Karyakin back in 2011 in the World Cup. But so wasn't addressed in those videos? So we saw like some comments on the history of women's chess, basically that hey, women were discriminated against, etc. And this is then they made women's tournaments, right, to create opportunity for them to be able to play, and of course there was a noble thing. What I would like to say, when people bring up the historical aspects, right, that tells us why there was the division, right, at one point, okay, but it doesn't answer the question if we need the division to continue today, or we need these titles. All right, so I look at that as a smoke screen, a red herring to distract from the modern issue. What I will say though about that is that there's a famous quote, I can't remember who said it, but it's about movements in general, whether you're talking about civil rights movement, movements to save the environment, etc., is that they basically all go through 3 phases. One, they start off with a great noble idea, right? That first generation, right, that first model of the movement is always the best part of it, right? It's noble, people are sincere, okay? Then the second phase is it turns into a business, right? Degenerates into a business, right? Because now the organization becomes respected and accepted by society, and right, the problem itself, the problems that it claimed to fight never goes away, right? Because if the problem was solved, then the organization would have to disband, and all those people making money off of said problem would have to find something else to do. So it becomes a business, and then the third stage, it just degenerates into a racket, and there's all kind of corruption and shady dealings going on, and we see this with a lot of different organizations, right? Okay, and this is how I look at it when people bring up these arguments that, oh well, there used to be discrimination, women couldn't play in men's tournaments, and therefore this is why it should be like that today, because clearly times have changed, and as the times change, then we should make adjustments, all right, in order to realize the fact that times have changed. So at one point, if women could not play in the men's chess tournaments, all right, then it makes sense to have a separate situation where women could play. That makes sense at that time, all right. But as society evolved and realized, hey, women should be able to participate, all right, there's no reason to have the barrier anymore. I heard another phrase that's thrown around also, which was the phrase, create a safe space, quote unquote safe space, which again is another red herring argument. It's not like all of these incidences are happening at chess clubs where women being treated badly. That's ridiculous. I've been playing chess for a very, very, very long time, right? I'm not trying. I don't want to give my age up, but I've been playing for a long time. Been in many tournaments, big tournaments, small tournaments, right? Opens. Had the pleasure to meet many GMs and things like that. I'll give you one hint at my age. I do remember sitting in a tournament. I want to say it was at the Days Inn Motel. It was one of those hotels for a chess tournament, and next to me was young Hikaru Nakamura was right next to me, and next to him was his brother Asuka Nakamura. So if you remember when his brother Asuka was playing, then that means you've been around a while. And again, I'm not saying nothing ever happened, right? Because, in the human population, there are going to be people who do bad things, who break the law, who harass people, etc., etc. It doesn't matter if it's at work, if it's on the, football field, baseball field, what have you. But to use the term create a safe space as if that men are just too primitive to be around, they just can't control themselves, is definitely a red herring and a ridiculous point to try to add to support the argument that there should be some type of separation between the genders, and that there should be women's chess title. I tend to agree with with the Botez sister there, that it just at this point it doesn't make sense. Yes, it didn't make sense at one point, yes, but today, does it make sense? No. Has it made sense for the last 40 years, 50 years? No. All right, but what's the elephant that I've been talking about? That I've been addressing. And shout out to Judith too, because she has to kind of dance around the issue a little bit, because the fact that she's a woman, and she wants to maintain the respect from a lot of these quote unquote progressive women. So she she's against it, but she's being careful with the words, and making sure she doesn't offend. So I definitely respect that, but at the same time, she's getting her point across, and I'm sure there's a lot of women out there that feel the same way. That listen, women can achieve, the same heights, intellectually. All right, so it's just a matter of them having the same opportunity. It's a matter of them having, these mental barriers removed, because that's what it is. And what it reminds me of is that old parable, I think it's an Indian parable, right, about the elephant, right? The elephant has been chained, and the chain, let's say, only can go 20 feet long, so the elephant goes as far as the chain allows him to go. And then after many years, the chain was removed from the elephant, and the elephant still only went to that same spot where the chain previously kept him from going any further. And this is a true and factual idea, is that if you believe something, you believe you only can go so far. You're not gonna go any further than that. Why would you believe that you could go further? It's just like when people believed, a long time ago, that they would sail their ships off the edge of the earth. They wouldn't go. They wouldn't go. Past a certain point. That kept a lot of people from exploring and finding new things. They couldn't go. It's just like before Roger Bannister, set the record, right, for the mile. Right, that record stood for a long time. That's why, because people believe collectively, hey, this is unbeatable. These records will stand forever. Okay, and so what Judith is saying is, hey, if you raising up young girls in the chess culture like this, hey, you could become a women's grandmaster. Hey, you could get to 2,600. And you plant that seed early on. Okay, that's as far as their mental script is going to allow. Meanwhile, you have guys like Hikaru, Magnus Carlsen, cruising over 2,800s, Fabiano Caruana, and they're just pushing the limits. Right? A lot of it is just mental. And of course, right, the it's like that confirmation bias then happens, right? Because the women have this mindset, they get, defeated by men in tournaments. Then it's like, see, told you, women, men are better, right? It just happens, it's like history just repeating itself over and over, but not because of the reasons or the lazy reasons we like to think, like, oh, men are just, more logical and stuff like that, right? It's definitely more complicated than that. And the Judith Polgar experiment, showed that it is possible, right? Of course, it takes great dedication. And again, if you look at that interview that I showed, partially, her parents sacrificed, everything. They both quit their jobs so that those kids could play chess. But it was a vision that the father had, right? That didn't matter what gender the kids were. They given the opportunity, the trainer, that a genius could be created. All right. And now Judith did not become world champion, but she made it into the top 10 and was respected. She earned her respect. She showed that, hey, it's not about male or female. All right. But now let's get to the elephant in the room. And this is why I believe, again, and this goes back to that quote that I said, that how the movements start out in a noble way, right? They have all these respectable values. Oh, safe space for women, just giving women, women opportunity, this and that. We want to get more girls in, right? That's the noble part. Then it degenerates to a business. That's phase 2, and then it just becomes a racket. We're definitely at phase 3, which, of course, includes the business part. But this is the elephant in the room that I don't really hear discussed that often. All right, and we're going to go to it right now. And, okay, so one of them is that the organization, right, these chess organizations, right, FIDE in particular, there's no incentive for them, right, to push back against having separate women's titles and a separation of the genders. Why is that? Because it costs money to get these titles. They make money off these titles. If there's some boxing fans out there, it's the same idea with these organizations, right? You have all these different boxing organizations like WBC belt, WBA belt, WBO belt, right? Just to name a few. And each belt, right, will charge the fighter a certain amount of money in order for them to be sanctioned and allow them to fight for this championship belt. See, a long time ago, there used to just be one belt. So whoever was the, say, like heavyweight champion of the world, everybody knew who that was. There was one belt. It was like the heavyweight champion of the world. There wasn't like, okay, this guy's heavyweight champion of the world, this organization. Now this guy's also heavyweight champion of the world, and there's in another organization. Now you had like 3 heavyweight champions, and we don't know who is the best. Right? So by having all these different organizations, they all charge money, and cause the fighters to have to force the fighters to spend in order to get a chance at a belt. All right. So with these titles, women's international master, women's GM, woman FM, etc., each title cost a certain amount of money to obtain. Now, I'm not saying that the titles cost money directly. Like, in other words, they're not going and saying, hey, here's $1,000. Can I have the women's FIDE title? All right. So just doing a quick search, right, with the Google. And again, you always do your proper research and go deeper. But this is just for expediting the video, right? So yes, FIDE titles cost money. Payers do not directly pay FIDE for these titles. Instead, their national federations, like U.S. Chess Federation, pay a fee to FIDE to process and award the title. So that's where you get the business part. Again, and it just degenerates into a racket, which can range from a few dozen to several hundred euros depending on the title. All right. So while the title isn't bought outright, it does require a financial transaction from the player's national federation after the player has achieved the required rating and norms. Okay. So now you understand why would an organization like FIDE want to abolish women's titles when it's a great source of income, right? So what you do is you get behind these so-called moral principles. Oh, we just want to create a safe space. We just want to make sure girls get a chance to, right? You get behind that. It's the smoke and mirrors, right? You act like there's some type of anti-women's culture, still around, in the game, stuff like that, right? You have to create these narratives. It's like a hustle, right? The problem, in other words, the problem always has to exist for you to justify the presence of whatever movement it is. So there always has to be a problem, where, a safe space, women, or they're not welcome, or, yes, etc. There always has to be a problem. So the problem must remain, right, for the racket to keep continuing. All right. So if you have women's IM titles, I don't know how much each title costs. I mean, you probably could look that up yourself. But you have women's international master, women's FIDE master, candidate master, women's grandmaster, right? And you just think about how many countries there are active, in chess, and how many players coming from each country. All right. You have, and there's another thing I forgot to mention. There's also the online titles. The FIDE had these gimmicky online titles. Again, it's about money, right? Because, you have so much online play. They have these online titles, and again, they cost money too. It all comes down to the money. So that's what I'm saying. Don't buy into this whole gender thing. It's all these problems and stuff. It does not exist, right? Are there incidents? Of course, there's always going to be incidents. Player X is married to player B and they get divorced, or, player X has a crush on player Y, and now player Y is talking to someone else, and they create a scene at the chess club. You're going to always have stuff like that. That's going to be everywhere, right? You're gonna have situations with people involved with each other at the workplace, and then they had some kind of public argument at the workplace. Okay, does that mean that all the female workers and the male workers need to be separated from each other? Botez made a good point. When you go to college, right? Are there women's bachelor's degrees, women's master's degrees, women's PhD degrees? No, it's PhD, master's, MBA. At least I don't know about them, right? Associates. Those are the degrees. Requirements are the same. So when you look at this FIDE, these titles, right? You ask yourself why. Always follow the money. It's all about. That's all it comes down to. So FIDE will never push against that, because it's like cutting off your income stream. That's like me being a chess content creator, supporting a bill that would say, you know what, no more chess content on YouTube. Like, why would I support something that is going to be against my best interest? Making chess content or something that I enjoy and love to share with the world. It'd be ridiculous. So FIDE is in the same position. Why would they promote banning separate gender titles in chess when they're getting money, and you would have to, see what their financial records are just to see how many of these titles that are being handed out and how much money they're making. I'm sure you probably could find. I don't know actually if their records are public. I will have to do more of a deep dive. So let me know in the comments if you'd be interested in something like that. But all I'm saying is that from FIDE's perspective, they will never push back or be against women. Women no longer having these titles. Here's the FIDE online title course that I was telling you about. So again, there isn't a single FIDE online title course, as you pay an application fee to FIDE for the title itself after fulfilling the eligibility requirements, and you also need to pay for a pro membership on the official FIDE online arena to play the qualifying games. For example, to get the ACM Arena Candidate Master title, there's a $5 Euro title fee and the pro membership fee. So that's just an example of, again, it's all about getting the money in, and so that's something a little different. But I did want to bring that up to you. I don't know if you knew that there is a such thing as a FIDE online title, right? But again, for this example, to get this candidate master title, there's $5. Of course, you gotta fulfill the requirements, maybe win a certain amount of games, whatever the requirements are, be 2,200 player, whatever. There's a $5 Euro title fee. So just imagine $5 multiplied by 100,000 people. That's a lot, a lot of money. So just take that and bring it back to the all of the FIDE women's titles. Okay. This is the last thing I'll say about FIDE's incentive to support women's chess. And when I say support women's chess, I mean the separation specifically of the genders. Again, yes, FIDE actively supports women's chess through initiatives like the Women's Chess Commission, specific funding for female players and coaches, growth in women's events, and projects like the National Female Team Initiative. Right? Now that I've told you what I've told you, doesn't it have a different feeling to it? Because again, every movement starts out noble. It sounds very positive, right? Who's gonna be against the Women's Chess Commission or specific funding for female players and coaches and growth in women's events? Who's gonna be against that? Projects like the National Female Team Initiative, it always sounds great, but then when you really think about what's going on, it's about increasing the revenue for the organization, right? You get more women into it. You get more women playing. You get more women to pay for these titles. More chess, more money. More, national organizations will be paying for these, female candidate FIDE master and international master titles. Right? So it says recent efforts include the Chess Mom Initiative, right? We got to get those moms in there, right? A global woman in chess marathon and events like the FIDE Women's World Cup, demonstrating a commitment to fostering equality, okay, and increasing opportunities in the sport. Again, that's all like mumbo jumbo. Fostering equality, what equality? Women being turned away at the door, a chess tournament. What exactly is the equality? All right, is it equality in numbers? You see? So when you say fostering equality, you know, psychologically it's saying that there must be some inequality somewhere. Right? As far as I know, women or any woman is allowed to take up chess and play, and there's nobody blocking, you know, there's no group of men holding arms in front of the Marshall Chess Club. Excuse me, 1 second. Sorry about that. There's not a group of male chess players in front of Marshall Chess Club, you know, banning, you know, keeping women from coming inside the chess club. All right. But again, like I said, the problem always has to be there for these type of incentives to keep rolling on. Right? You have to have a problem always. So the problem is like a boogeyman, right? We can't really put our finger on it or name some instances or point to anything. So we have to say equality and increasing opportunities, you know, just vague things, you know, in general. All right? Because believe me, if you're really talented, you're really good, the doors are going to open. The sponsors are going to be there. And that shows you can see the rise of all chess players from all across the world. Right? Magnus Carlsen was talented, so the opportunity, you know, everything, it's like one hand washes the other. The doors are going to be there. People are going to see that and say, hey, we got to get this guy, you know, some sponsorships, et cetera, et cetera. And it'd be the same for a woman, as we saw with Judith Polgar. Let's see what else they have down here. So these are some key initiatives, right? You know, the Women's Chess Commission, right? Increase funding, prioritize funding for female players, coaches, and arbiters, and increase the number and prize funds of women's chess events, which is very interesting because, again, where's the money coming from? And right, because a certain amount of people have to enter the tournament. So somebody's taking a loss somewhere. Is it FIDE taking a loss? I doubt it. National Female Team Initiative. This program helps countries establish female teams with the goal of increasing female participation in events like the Chess Olympiad. Again, if you're interested in playing, and you know what I'm saying, then you'll just play. And Chess Mom Initiative offers financial assistance to female players with infants for major events and global celebrations such as the August Women Chess Marathon. Again, that doesn't sound like equality to me. That sounds like inequality, right? Because why would it be you offering financial assistance to female players with infants? What about male chess players with kids or something? You know, I don't know. And again, where is the money? Where's the money coming from? It just says it offers financial assistance to female players. All right. But that's a different subject altogether. Then it says here, make sure you guys can see this. Addressing gender disparities. FIDE focuses on facilitating open discussions and addressing issues related to gender disparities within the chess arena. Again, smoke and mirrors. Why does FIDE have to facilitate open discussions? Like, people are afraid to talk about it. There's nothing. Nobody's afraid to talk about this. But again, like I said, the problem must continue to be exacerbated, and we have to act like there's some type of issue, because then there would be no reasons for all of these quote unquote initiatives, right? You know, people say this about Big Pharma, right? Sometimes they say that it costs more money, right, to for a person. In other words, that the pharmaceutical companies would rather treat the illness, treat the symptoms, than give you the cure, right? Because you make more money like that. You just drag out whatever it is. So even though the problem is long gone and dealt with and solved already, we have to still act like there's this issue. See, another thing, the organization is working to reduce prize gaps between men and women's events and to encourage women's participation in roles beyond playing, such as arbiters, trainers, and organizers, right? Now, again, how can the organization work to reduce prize gaps? That sounds like, like they're just going to step in and artificially, right? They're going to step in and artificially just make some arbitrary number, right? Which goes against all like basic economic principles. You only can pay out a percentage of what you're getting in. It's just like this whole argument with the NBA versus the WNBA. It's the women should get paid what the men get paid, and you hear these like silly arguments, right? These real silly arguments. Okay, how can you get paid what the men get paid if the men are bringing in more revenue? The men are getting paid based on the revenue that they pull in. So a player like LeBron James is going to get paid whatever he gets paid a year. I think he gets paid $35 million or something. You could look that up. $40 million. Why does LeBron James get so much money and say another player on the team might only get $5 million? It's because of the revenue that LeBron James is able to pull in, or the value. It's the same with the team. It's the same with men's chess versus women's chess, right? This is just like when Gary Kasparov was playing, right? And they had to get sponsors, right, for these matches. Everybody wanted to see Gary Kasparov versus Vladimir Kramnik. It brought a lot of sponsors, right? There wasn't as much interest in Gary Kasparov versus Alexei Shirov because Gary Kasparov had beat Shirov a bunch of times convincingly. It was harder to get the sponsorship behind that kind of match. It wasn't necessarily a discrimination against Shirov, who actually deserved that, probably should have played that match because he did beat Kramnik in the match. But that's a different story. And if you're interested in that, I have a video on that too. Look that up on my channel, right? I think the name of the video is "Did Shirov Get Robbed of a Title Shot?" But these things are economic issues being posed as some type of sexist or discriminatory issue, which is not. Okay. So, and then finally it says sponsorship. While some sponsorships have drawn controversy, like the one with Establishment Labs in 2021, they represent FIDE's efforts to secure financial backing specifically for women's chess event. Again, that doesn't sound like equality, right? It sounds like inequality, right? They want to push women's chess. And again, like I said, when you read these things, it sounds very noble, but you gotta look deeper and realize that it's all about the money. So that's enough on the FIDE side of it. Okay, so that's why you will never see FIDE push back against that. You will never hear FIDE talking about, hey, we need to just make it all one big happy family, just Grandmaster title, International Master title, FIDE Master title, and that's it. You would not hear that because too much money is on the line. Okay, so now that we talked about FIDE, why don't more women speak out against this? And the incentive is the same. It's the exact same incentive. The incentive, like putting these there so you could just see the the titles, empowering equality. It sounds great. Sponsorship with women's breast implant company, all this stuff like. But anyway, why? What's the women's incentive? Why don't more women speak out against it? It's the same thing. It comes down to the money, right? If you keep the tournament separate, right, it's easier for a woman, right, who's very strong to win those particular tournaments. Okay, like for instance, say if Judith Polgar decided to come back right now, right, and say she got to, whatever, her old form, right, 2,700, and she just said, you know what, I'm just gonna play in women's tournaments. She would win all the prizes, right, and probably win the world championship again. She'd definitely be right up there at the top immediately, right? Give her some training, knock the rust off. She'll be close to the top, if not win the world chess championship. Definitely in her heyday, forget about it. If she said, you know what, I'm gonna just do that, because she could have won all the prizes. Yeah, would the prizes be less? Say like men's tournament. Let's just make up some prizes. Men's tournament is the men's section. Let's say the top prize is $100,000, right, for the winner. But let's say in the women's section is $50,000 for the winner, right? A lot of these women grandmasters, they have no chance of even placing in the money period in the men's section. However, they have chance to win whatever, 20,000 for second place or 10,000 for third place, right? Or 50,000 for the first place prize. So the monetary incentives are there for the women to keep this thing going on also. Of course, they're not gonna say that. They're not gonna come out and say, hey, it's easier for me to win more money like this. Right? When asked the reason, they're gonna give you the noble reasons. Hey, we just want to create safe space and all this stuff like that. No, it's the money. They can also get scholarships, right? Because you have this, since the chess is divided, you have these scholarships to these colleges where grandmaster can get some money for college, et cetera, and then you have the women grandmaster title, so the scholarship exists for them also. So it all comes down to money. All of this, safe space, nonsense, making it seem like it's the 1930s in 2025. That's what is never addressed in these interviews when this subject is brought up. It all comes down to the money. I showed you in great detail how FIDE has no incentive to abolish the system, and I've also given you some details about why women themselves really don't speak out against it. Definitely as a unified front. Like you'll hear some women here and there, like Judith Polgar saying, like, listen, we should knock that off, or like I just showed you the Botez video. But many of them will be on the other side. But again, they're not going to tell you the financial incentive. So here's just like another example, like a quick example of like, this is from uschess.org. This is US Chess Women 2025 grant cycle, supporting programs that empower women and girls through chess education, competition, and community engagement. Applied before August 16th, 2025. And again, these are just, it says awards bids will range between 1,000 and 10,000. Let's see, what are the requirements? Program benefits a small or large group of chess members or potential members rather than targeting specific individuals. Intent to attract 50% participation of girls, women, gender minorities. Chess adherence to U.S. chess safe play policy, right, etc. Not to get like too deep into reading all these things, but I just want you guys to know that there's even here you can see, right, this article, U.S. Chess Women's Program awards 17 grants And again, I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with getting grants and stuff like that, but what I'm trying to show you is that the incentives to keep things the status quo is very strong for women, and it's also strong for the large governing body of chess, which is FIDE. But like I said, do not be fooled. It's all about the money. It's definitely mostly about the money, right? From the women's side, like I said, being able to get scholarships, being able to get easier access to prizes, right? Because if you could be, 2,300, women's grandmaster, a women's international master, and beat your competition who might have, a bunch of, 2,100s, 2,000 players in there, and walk away with $30,000, like who is going to go and say, you know what, let me forget this, I'm gonna just play in an all male tournament and wind up in 23rd place with no money? And we all know how expensive it can be to play chess if you're trying to travel from place to place, etc. So the incentive is very strong for women to want to cling to these titles, and it's very strong for FIDE to want to keep the titles. But like I said, let's keep it 100 when we ask why are there women's titles. It's about the money. Flat out, point blank. That's the overriding reason. You want to throw all this like little stuff in there, and use all of these like labels and misogyny, history, discrimination in the past, and all that stuff like that. Like I said, we already knocked all of that down. Like I said, we all know that at one time these things were prevalent, and that the causes for starting these type of movements were very noble. But now it's, like I said, now it's a business and a racket, basically, and the incentive is money. And we know that the problem must continue to be presented constantly to us so that it would justify, the status quo remaining. So anyway, that's my take on that. Please like, subscribe. What else? Please consider supporting the channel with the links below, and please get in the comments, man. If you disagree with me, male or female, please let it be known. Keep it respectful, of course, but let it be known. Let it be known. If you have a different take on it, let me know. All right, but that's just my opinion, and I know we all have one, and I would definitely love to hear yours. So I'll see you guys on the next video.